Welcome to Ability Assistance. My name is Phyllis Jones, Chair of the North Andover Commission on Ability Assistance.
My name is Stacy Leibowitz, Secretary of the North Andover Commission on Ability Assistance.
This month we are pleased to welcome Deana Criess, Senior Organizational Development Specialist from the Career Launch Program at Perkins School for the Blind. Welcome, Deana.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's a joy to be talking with you both.
So let's start a little bit. We always like to ask people, what did you do to get into a role where you were serving people of all abilities?
That is a long journey, but I'll try to keep it brief. So I grew up in a house where special education and sort of honoring people with different abilities was just part of my growing up. My mother was a special educator her entire life, and she brought us into the classroom all the time. And then, I went and studied communications and theater and thought that would be my path, and ended up having two gorgeous children who also have diagnoses, and sort of that started pulling me back toward the world of special education. Ended up working in an integrated preschool with students with multiple complexities and their typical peer models. And at the same time, I started taking classes in improvisation and realized there was a direct connection between the work that I was doing in improv classes and what I could be doing with my students in the preschool. And so that work sort of became the foundation of a 2-decade career where I use improvisation to educate folks in all kinds of school settings. And that led me to Perkins, and I just fell in love with the mission of Career Launch, and here I am.
Now, could you describe to us, improv, people may not understand exactly what that is to some degree. How do you use improv to help people of all different abilities?
Yeah, that's a great question, Phyllis. So improvisation, if people have heard of it at all, they typically think of it as, sort of comedy that's made up on the spot, which is in essence what it is. And what that kind of training can teach you to do off stage is so many things. It can help you model social cues. It can help you be comfortable with the unknown. It can help pull you out of loops when you're sort of perseverating. It can help keep you in the moment. It can help you build confidence in your communication skills. It can help you with problem solving. It can help you build relationships. There's just so much that it can do. And so obviously there are applications for it that exist, in every classroom setting from, birth through college and beyond. And so I loved being at a place where they recognized that and felt like this was an experiment worth trying. And these skills have had a huge impact on the folks that we work with.
That's really amazing. So you're at the Perkins School, and not everybody in our audience may know about the Perkins School. So if you don't mind telling us a little bit about what the mission of the school is, and then going into a little bit of what you do with Career Launch through Perkins.
Yeah, absolutely. Perkins School for the Blind is the oldest school for the blind in the country. It's here in Massachusetts, in Watertown. It's the second oldest school for the blind in the world.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, very impressive.
So the first one in the world was in France. And so the founders of Perkins went and saw that school and then wanted to bring one to the United States. And at its core, it started as a school for the blind and deafblind. And so now it still serves that mission and beyond. So we have students who live on our campus, residential students. We have day students from all over Massachusetts and all over the country. We have programs where we go out into the community. So we have outreach programs that serve students all over Massachusetts. We have an international program where we're building, we're educating teachers for the blind and sending them all over the world to serve students in other countries. And now we're serving adults through a handful of programs, one that prepares high school students for college, and then our program, which is Career Launch, which prepares adults with visual impairments to enter the workplace.
How long has Career Launch, before we get into the specifics of it, how long has Career Launch been around?
The program has been up and running since the fall of 2019, and prior to that, we spent about 3 years building it, writing curriculum, doing research, testing it, in sort of mini versions, and then the full version rolled out in the fall of 2019.
Now, what's the history? How did this program come about?
Yeah, there's obviously a huge, maybe not so obviously, there's a huge issue in the community where there's a lot of really robust services for kids while they're in school, right? And then once they finish high school, whether that's at at 17 or 18, or whether that's an extended program where it might be more like 22, once high school is over, there tends to be a drop in services.
Yes.
And students are left sort of not knowing what their next step is. And so given that Perkins serves the community through the end of high school, it was pretty clear that there could be a way that Perkins could take that expertise and support people beyond that. And what a lot of people don't realize is that the unemployment rate among adults with visual impairments, so these are adults who could work and they have a visual impairment, the unemployment rate is 70%, so 70.
Yeah,
70% of adults.
That is extensive.
And that's usually, unfortunately, the case for people of all different abilities.
Yeah. So it's a crisis, right? I mean, and those numbers were before the pandemic. We know that because of COVID, when a lot of companies were laying people off, people who a company may have felt like, oh, that I have to do a little more lifting or hand holding or whatever a company's bias is. People with disabilities were often the first to be, if they were hired at all, they were the first to be let go.
Right.
So we believe that crisis has only gotten worse, at least at the beginning of the pandemic. So Career Launch was created with that in mind, that we have this population of people who we know are able to work and are incredibly talented. They just need some barriers removed. So our program not only serves the adults with direct education and job training, we also educate employers. So we are advocating to employers that we have this untapped talent pool that could do the jobs that you need, right? People are in hiring crises all over the country right now. They're looking for staff, and we know that there are plenty of people out there who could do those jobs well.
So in looking at the program, because I went through your website and it's quite impressive, I also work in disability services and work with individuals on the autism spectrum and various disabilities. So it's the same concern about the workforce. What I've noticed is that you have a boot camp as part. I mean, there are a few components, and I'm intrigued to learn more about how that works, because it's an employment boot camp. I think it's from 18 to 35 is the age. And you're learning about, because everything is online, everything is about computers, and if you have somebody who is sight impaired or completely blind, how does that work? Because I've seen like Salesforce and you have Google Suite. I think that's amazing, and it would be great to learn more, because if people have those skills, regardless of their ability, they're going to be hired. So how does that work?
Right. Yeah, so we have two versions of the program. One is the full sort of very intense, robust version of the program, which is about 14 months. And then we have this newer component, which you're referring to, which is our tech boot camp. So they're business tech boot camps. And the idea is they're all done virtually, so anyone can log in from home. We give you all the skills that you need to do that before the boot camp starts, so you're not just on day one trying to figure out how to log in. And then we're teaching you, depending on the week, all the ins and outs of either the Microsoft Suite or the Google Suite. And there are lots of programs, and certainly at the high school level, ideally, people who are blind or visually impaired are used to maybe using their Braille note taker, or they're used to using their JAWS screen reader or Zoom text, whatever access technology they need. Some schools are good at teaching them how to use their accommodations, right? How to use their access tech. What our program is doing is teaching you actually how to be experts in the software itself. So not just how do you learn a little bit to be able to send an email, but rather how do you become expert level so that on your resume you can say, I am an expert in Excel. I know the Microsoft Suite inside and out. And that's going to then give you a leg up over your peers when you're applying for that job.
Most
And that's
definitely.
really, it's sort of the through line of our program is to make sure that the folks who come through our program who are blind and visually impaired end up with a resume that is stronger than someone else who's applying, right? So the employer is now almost forced to consider them when they wouldn't necessarily, right? Because they're like, well, they've got the strongest resume, let's give them a shot. And like you said, in the longer version, we're teaching things like Salesforce, which is the industry standard for customer relationship management. So they really do come out with a very well-rounded, job-ready resume.
And that, I think, is what's most important for any field. It's not just a matter of what you were doing in high school as much as how you got to where you got and what type of internships you were doing, even in the high school level. What type of internships you were doing in high school and college. I think those are skills that everybody needs, and the fact that there's this extra component to give people a little extra help because they just need the extra help in order to be able to break that glass barrier.
And I think it also, to that point, it changes how you talk about how building relationships with employers is critical and educating them.
Yes.
And that's what we do too, where I work, because that is information, the knowledge, it just helps to break those barriers. But it's understanding how people are able to learn that despite having a disability, having been seeing impaired or blind, you can still do this kind of work. And I think that's an educational component that is priceless for people, because even for me reading that, I thought, that's great.
Yeah.
So that's
like, where was this program all along?
Right.
Or
but
this
we evolved.
Right.
A thing that I learned when we were doing our research to build the program is that, when you think about what people's biggest fears are, they usually say, public speaking is one, is a big fear.
Right.
I didn't realize that among the top 5 fears is losing your sight. So among
That makes sense, though.
typically sighted people, one of their greatest fears is losing their sight. And people think that they can understand that experience, right? Because we're all able to close our eyes.
Yeah.
So
Right.
But you have
employers
control
often-
of it.
Right. So employers often think, well, if I closed my eyes and tried to do this job, I couldn't do it. Therefore, someone who is blind can't do this job.
Right.
We know that's not true. And yet I can understand why their first thought is that, right? It's not that every employer is a terrible person. It's just there's this inherent bias that we then have to go out and help correct and educate people on how technology has changed so much over the last even
It's huge.
10 years, 5 years,
It's huge.
that it's really unlocked a whole world. I mean, even what we're doing right now, the fact that I can be in my house and talking to you
Yes.
Yes,
means
absolutely.
that we've removed the transportation barrier. So for a lot of people with disabilities, that transportation piece is their biggest hurdle to work through. So now accommodations have become the norm, right? COVID has made accommodations a word that people understand, they hear, they recognize. They're doing it for their other employees all the time.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
by logical extension, they should be able to do it.
It makes complete sense. I mean, because I think that's probably the only really good thing that's come out of COVID is how people have been able to pivot and be able to shift to online learning, online work, remote work. I mean, it's changed how we look at things, that we can all be creative.
And it's taken even some of the most classic offices. I used to practice as an attorney. I'm no longer practicing. But, for over 20 years, I mean, you used to hear my horror stories,
Yes.
Stacy, of no, we can't do it. And, now trials are being held remotely.
Yep.
Right.
hearings, informal, administrative hearings are being held remotely, whether it be by phone or by video. Attorneys are having meetings with their clients remotely. So it's kind of forced even some more older professions.
Or traditional.
Or
professions.
traditional, yes,
Yeah.
we'll go with traditional.
Yeah, for lack of a.
Yes, more traditional professions to be more open, because they had to be, they had no choice.
Yeah,
Uh,
agreed. They had no choice, and necessity is the mother of invention, and
Yes.
we've seen that over the
Absolutely.
last 2+ years. I always use this analogy now that if my colleagues at Perkins who work in the deaf-blind school with 5-year-olds can figure out how to teach those students over Zoom or over
Yes,
Google or over
exactly.
whatever platform, then I feel like probably most jobs can be done this way. If they
Exactly.
can figure that out, we can figure the rest out.
Exactly. Now, let's get back to the program itself. Okay, so I'm an individual, I fall into your umbrella class of who you serve. Okay, how do I get started with the program?
Great question. The first step is one of two things. Either an adult, comes across our website or sees something like this and reaches out. There's a form right on our website where people can reach out for more information, and then they'd be connected to myself or one of my colleagues to talk about the program. The other way people hear about us is through their vocational rehab counselors. So we have a really great relationship with the Mass Commission for the Blind, and often their vocational rehab counselors will recommend to appropriate folks that they work with that they maybe check out Career Launch. So yeah, the first step is really just learning a little bit about us and seeing whether people are the right fit. And then if we feel like it is, there's an application process. And then we have classes that start. Right now we run 2 cohorts a year for our longer program, which again is the 14-month program. One typically in the fall, and then one that starts in the spring. And then the program itself for that longer program is 2 months of full-time intense job skills training. So that is right now done like this. It's done virtually from your house. And you're in group classes with peers, so you're getting to meet people who are going through a similar experience to you. There's about 5 different instructors in the program. There's guest speakers, there's lunch and learns. There's a lot of dynamic delivery. So it's not just you're sitting here in a class all day. There's independent work and group projects. So that happens. Oh, and there's job simulations. So over the course of the 8
Yes,
weeks,
that's really great.
you're getting to try on different roles to figure out what you like and what works for you and what you do well. And that all helps us then in the career services portion, which is a year-long program where we're helping you really hone in on what it is you want to do with the skills that you have, what skills you still need to build, and then helping you land a job. Once we do, that program converts from job acquisition to job coaching. So then we're there with you helping make sure that everything's going well in the job and that you're successful, because ultimately that's what the whole program is about. It's not just about getting the job. It's making sure that it's an environment that you are loving and that you're thriving in that job.
Right.
Now-
And, I'm sorry, I was going to ask, because we do job coaching as well. The ultimate goal is to fade that job coach, correct? So
Correct,
that person
yeah.
can be
Yep.
independent.
Exactly. So the goal for our program is competitive integrated employment, and ideally that, eventually we're not needed, which is always a weird, always
But
a
that's
weird
success.
goal.
Yeah, that's success.
But yeah, that's success, is when you no longer need us. And we're there for you. We have people who have been in the program and been working for a couple of years, and if they hit a snag, they'll still call us and say, hey, can I run this by you? Can you give me some advice? But ultimately, it is their career and their path, and we want to make sure that they are able to, at any point, take the skills they've learned and run with them. So if they want to change jobs, they now have the skills to do that job search again, and they know the steps for negotiating their contract, and they know their rights under the ADA, and all of the things that will make them successful in this job and beyond.
Now, one of the things, what people may not know is every time we have a guest, I always do a pre-call, where we sit down and we talk for about a half hour. And one of the things that I found interesting, now the age group you serve is 18 to
35.
Okay, and so I mistakenly thought you were serving mostly kids straight out of high school. But you were
Yeah.
telling me you've got college grads, MBAs in this program
We
that are
do.
still having, even with the higher education levels, are still having problems finding careers.
It's one of the biggest surprises, I would say, in the program. We really built the program with the idea that these would be mostly folks coming directly out of high school. And what we found when we opened the program up when we opened applications up, is that most of the applications coming in were from people who actually either had some college or had completed an associate's, a bachelor's, or we've even had one participant with an MBA. What was discouraging about that is to know that even people who have these advanced degrees are still finding barriers to employment. And it also sort of made us realize this issue is bigger than education, right? It's not about your education level. It's about bias in the workplace.
Exactly.
And so while we do, the program is still open to anyone who's completed their, with a high school diploma. The fact that we've been able to sort of shift and serve people at all education levels has really been a benefit. The job sort of acquisition process is customized to each individual. So, it's not like we're going to have people competing for the same jobs. That wouldn't be fair to the person with the high school diploma to be competing for the same job as the person with the MBA.
Exactly.
So it really is customized to them and their goals and where their skills are. And I think that flexibility has allowed everyone who's gone through the program to be successful.
So somebody can do anything from being a call representative, when you call those 1-800 numbers, to a staffer on Capitol Hill or Beacon Hill, or a paralegal with appropriate technology to assist with reading a document, for example, to anything in between.
Right. Our program focuses on a category we call customer success. So it's any role where serving customers, helping customers problem solve, communicating on behalf of a company, where that is the main focus of the role. So that could be staff aides to a legislator on Beacon Hill who is dealing with constituents, right? It could also be, answering phones for, a national, florist, right? So it really does run the gamut across all sectors, which is why we love customer success. So we've got folks working in finance, we've got folks working in, the hotel industry, we've got folks working in, at colleges and universities serving students. We've got folks working in insurance, in tech, in healthcare. So it really does
run a gamut.
What you want to do. Like, we want to know what this adult wants to do with their life. We're not here to tell you have to work in this particular kind of role. It's, do you want to work in healthcare? We're going to figure out how to get you there. Do you want to work in education? We're going to figure out how to get you there.
So I think that's a good segue to talk about employers.
Thank you. I was exactly going to go there.
Because I think that's the issue again. I there's so much we have in common, because I know what I do professionally, that part of what we do is educating employers, because there is that bias. And I don't think it's an intentional bias. It's what like the whole I close my eyes and this is how it is type of thing. How do you, number one, how do you work with employers to educate them? What does that process look like? And also, who are the kinds of employers, or what types of employers do you work with?
When we started building the program, one of the benefits of having our program nested in Perkins, being a part of the Perkins community, is Perkins has obviously been around for a really long time. So that reputation helped us connect with some of the largest employers and really most exciting employers that we could find in Massachusetts and around the country. So from the very beginning of planning the program, we were able to identify companies that were excited about this idea and happy to help us not only to potentially hire folks when they finished our program, but really to help us build the curriculum around customer success. So we were able to work with companies like Fidelity, like Wayfair, they're a worldwide online retailer, companies like Winston Flowers, the Museum of Science, these great Massachusetts-based companies who worked with us to help us build curriculum. So what we did is we said to them, okay, how would you train your employee? What is the software you use at your company? Let's replicate that. So the program is really built in lockstep with these great Massachusetts-based employers, Partners Healthcare, Spalding, and then we continue to work with them as the program evolves. So they're with us when we want to make curriculum changes, when we're doing job simulations. We have their employees will call and serve as volunteers in the program to help train. And, obviously those employers are also very willing and ready because they've been through our program and they know us and they know our participants, if they've got appropriate openings to interview and potentially hire our employees. We work a little bit differently than some programs, so we don't have, these are the 3 companies that we always work with, and when you finish the program, you'll automatically interview for a role at one of these companies. We really do want the adult to be the driver of where they want to be.
So you serve as headhunter too, to use an old
Yeah,
80s term.
Yeah, it really is. It really is about building those relationships with and for each participant. So we're always adding employers to our list because as people's career goals change, as we get more participants, we're reaching out to new companies all the time. And we do now because of the nature of remote work and more companies being willing to hire. We certainly do work with companies outside of Massachusetts, but we're very proud to say that most of our employer partners are based right here in Massachusetts and are hiring people from Massachusetts and also from outside of the state, because that's what remote work is now.
No, that's
Absolutely.
fantastic. Now, what would you say to an employer, or maybe, I'm thinking maybe like someplace like the Better Business Bureau, okay? Who sits back and says, gee, I'm a small business, I like the idea of this program, I just don't know how to get started to be able to bring somebody in as an employee, because let's face it, one of the things employers get concerned about is, I'm going to train you, you're going to do well, and you're going to move on to something better, for lack of a better term. Whereas I think in this situation, if you take somebody in who might otherwise have a hard time getting in, and they get trained, and somebody takes them under their wing, that person can grow within the company and stay within the company, so you haven't lost anything.
Yeah.
So what do you say to those employers, especially the smaller employers who'd love to give opportunities to people? How could they do this?
Yeah, well, Phyllis, you're exactly right. I think people are worried about retention and investment, and when they think about hiring someone with disabilities, they typically think there's 2 things: a lot of investment and a lot of risk. The fact of the matter is that the state will typically cover most of the accommodation costs. So anything you have to put in place to accommodate, someone who is blind or visually impaired, MCB will work with you to figure out what that is, set it up, and cover those costs.
So a Braille keyboard, for example.
Exactly. So the
or,
average,
or something, a text reader, for example.
Yeah, so making sure that, your cash register software, for example, if you're a small business and you were thinking about hiring someone in a customer success role, making sure that system could work with a screen reader or a magnifier. the average cost of accommodation is less than $300. And like I said, Mass Commission for the Blind typically covers the cost of accommodation. And what we know through all sorts of research is that employees with disabilities are typically far more loyal than any
Yes,
other
this is
employee.
very
They will
true.
stay with your
Very
company
true.
longer, and
Yep.
morale across your company improves. So when you hire someone who may have a disability, everyone at the company is happier in their role. And maybe that's just because they really like the person you've hired. It's also, I think, because they know their company is willing to be flexible and
yeah.
forward thinkers, and it's a good environment to work in.
How many times have we seen those Facebook, postings or those YouTube postings where perhaps there's somebody with Down syndrome working at a local fast food restaurant, and you talk to their coworkers, and the manager of the place is like, this person's been with me for 5 years, the best employee I've ever had. Or the coworkers are like, I love working with, whoever this individual happens to be, because they've shown me there's so much more that can be accomplished in spite of.
Yeah, and I think also to add to that, because the folks people who do end up working, who have these disabilities and challenges, they're more than aware of their own, disability, as far as,
Right.
Being sight impaired, or somebody with Down syndrome or autism. They know what it's like to hit a wall. And
Yeah.
so their gratitude for being able, they are going to be your best worker, because they've had so many challenges.
We see
trying
that
to
right
find
here
work.
on the show.
Yeah.
We see that right here on the show. We pull most, if not all of our volunteer crew from Greater Lawrence Tech, because they've got 2 programs that kind of feed into this. The other person we pull is a graduate who now goes to college, close to town. But, we have 2 people, or maybe 3 at this point, all of which with just different levels of autism on the spectrum, unless there's everybody has something that comes up, sort of a thing. But unless that's something, if they say they're going to be here, they're going to be here.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they're always the ones who show up, and we love having them. We've seen them blossom.
They know their stuff.
They know
have
their
learned. They
yes.
know what they're doing.
And
it's amazing.
so I'm sure you see the same exact thing in your community and the community you service.
We do. It's people want to be treated well. They want to be treated fairly. That's true of all of us, right? So I think it's true of the folks that go through our program, and it's also true of their colleagues, right? So if you are their colleague and you see someone being treated fairly and being treated well, you are also more likely to stay with that company. So it really does have impact beyond, I'm going to take a chance on this one person and cross my fingers and hope it works out. It really does impact the company well beyond that. And studies have shown it also increases your bottom line, right? Companies who hire people with disabilities and have a more inclusive workplace have higher revenue.
Now,
So it really is a win-win for companies, and they just don't know that yet. So I encourage everyone, if you're an employer who is wondering how do I do that? How do I even go about it? Is it a risk? There are plenty of organizations that will support you as you go through those.
Exactly.
and I was going to ask, you're there as a coach, a job coach for the individual, but aren't you also really there as a job coach for the employer? So
Yeah.
that for nothing, but you're holding both of their hands as a bridge.
Yes.
And as time goes on, they're able to hold each other's hands as opposed to using you as the bridge between.
Yeah, absolutely. So even before they meet potential candidates from our program, employers can reach out to us to find out more about how do I even go about making my workplace accessible for folks who are blind and visually impaired. And certainly there are, MCB, which is our state's organization that I've mentioned so many times, they do a wonderful job with that as well. So if you have questions, if you're an employer and you're a small business and you're wondering, I don't have the resources of a Fidelity or a Wayfair, so I couldn't possibly do it. There are probably ways that you can do it, and they won't, they won't be a financial burden to you. In fact, it'll be a win for everyone.
Now, you're talking a financial burden can be removed for the employer.
Mm-hmm.
What does it cost for the participant to participate in this program? And are there scholarships? Are there ways to defer costs?
The cost of the program is typically covered by their state. So
Perfect.
it is whether it's the week-long tech boot camps or whether it's our 14-month, entire career launch program. Like I said, we have a great relationship with MCB. So if they determine that the person on their caseload is a great fit for the program, they meet our age range, they have they've completed high school, their career goals align with the kinds of things we're great at teaching, then MCB will cover the cost of that.
That's really
I
incredible.
think that's huge, because
Yeah.
people sit back, whether it be the parent, the individual themselves, they sit back and go, oh my God, this sounds really, really good,
But how much is it going to cost?
but how much is it going to
Yeah.
cost me?
So, I mean, Massachusetts,
Right.
I think, does a very good job in these cases, because it's the same thing with the population I work with through the Department of Developmental Services or Mass Rehab. So the
Yeah.
state has been very supportive in that respect to help people develop those independent skills, because really it's a win-win situation
Yes.
across the whole spectrum. And that brings me to a question about those who've graduated the program and who have found success in the community.
Yeah.
Is there sort of like an alumni group? Is there a connection between the alums and current students, even like a mentoring type of situation to put people together to give them that face-to-face with a peer who's gone through the program?
Yeah, I've done it, you can too.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
exactly.
it's really interesting. Again, when we've discovered all of these benefits to the program that we didn't initially realize would be sort of baked into the cake. A lot of the folks who come to our program may have been in a typical education setting, right? So they didn't come to Perkins School for the Blind or didn't go to a school for the blind. So sometimes in our program, that's the first time they're meeting other people with visual impairments, their first time learning alongside people with visual impairments. It's certainly their first time meeting people who are in very similar situations to them. And the bonding that happens there happens fast and stays forever. So we were
That's
really
fantastic.
excited
Yes, it
about
is.
how quickly people became lifelong friends. And like I said, we started in 2019, and we've got people who finished that first class and still talk to each other all the time, connect with us all the time. We have regular events where we might do a trivia night, and anyone who's ever been through the program can come and play. And they do still, they still keep in touch with us all the time. They call us with questions, career questions or life questions, and we do connect them, the folks who have been through it and are now working, with the current classes that are learning. So we have these lunch and learns and guest speaker panels, and we'll have folks who have been previous participants, if they can get time off of work for an hour or two to pop in virtually and talk to people about what they're doing now. Because like I said, we have people working in so many different fields that we want to make sure our participants are getting a sense of what it's really like to be out in the world, and what does it mean to be a learning and development specialist at a tech company, and how does that relate to customer success? Our participants are the best people to be able to tell those stories.
I think, I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, what I think is great about this is it's not cookie cutter.
It's not cookie cutter, and I think you made a very interesting comment that's sort of the reverse of what so many people with at least developmental disabilities and other disabilities have experienced, that this was sort of, you said, the first time that people were meeting each other with visual challenges, and as opposed to the opposite, where growing up, you're sort of, at least in the traditional system, kind of segregated. And the whole idea is inclusivity, that's easy for me to say, but being inclusive, which is great that they've started off that way, but also to meet their peers to address issues that they've had along the way.
Internal support systems.
Exactly, you have that built-in support system in addition to already being amongst the masses, so to speak.
Yeah, it's that point of connection that we didn't realize was missing until literally the first night the first class got together, and we realized, oh, most of these people have never met another person who is blind. And
Now-
that the joy they were already immediately experiencing, being able to say, me too, was pretty incredible.
Now, how many graduating students have you had at this point?
Well, that's a great question. So our average cohort size is 6. We keep it very small because of the intense individualized
Which
services
makes sense.
that we're providing. So what would that be? Oh no, I'm very bad at doing quick math. But let's see, we follow. Let me.
But
you
they're
want me to
smaller, they're smaller
Yeah.
cohorts, which, like, to your points, it makes sense for that attentiveness.
Yeah.
How many instead of how many people, how about do you know or remember how many graduating classes? Like,
Yeah, so we did fall of 2019, we did spring of 2020, pandemic hit, we had to make the residential program virtual. We were back up and running with a brand new all virtual program by the fall of 2020. So then we did those 3, then spring 2021, fall 2021. We just finished our 6th cohort.
That's fantastic.
That's very impressive, especially through COVID. I mean, that you were able to pivot and do that.
Just like everyone else, that was a learning curve for all of us.
I think for everyone, but we've jumped in and have, I think, really been successful. So it's great to have that as an option. One of the things I wanted to ask too, because you've talked about MCB, and obviously that being probably your primary funder, supporter, what other nonprofits or organizations have you worked with? Where else do you potentially receive support from for your programs?
Yeah, so there are, certainly we have folks who, in Massachusetts, most of our participants do come through MCB. We also sometimes have folks referred to us directly from their high schools. We also have people who have come through the Carroll Center and maybe have done their independent living skills training there. And then the Carroll Center might say, hey, for your next step, think about career launch. So, we do work closely with nonprofits all over the country. But as you said, most of our participants are coming through their state's agencies. I mean, the good news is, we do live in a country where support services for people with visual impairments is fairly robust compared to other countries, and so they're able to leverage those support systems to come and get the job skills they need.
Beyond Massachusetts, what other states in the country have you had students participate? Because you could have a student from Hawaii or Alaska to right next door in New Hampshire, or anywhere in between.
Yeah, we definitely have had people, the farthest folks we've had are from California, and they're doing the same classes as the folks that are sitting here in Massachusetts. So, there is a time difference, and we try to account for that so they're not having to do classes at 4 a.m. But yeah, we've had folks from really all over the country, Michigan, Florida, Georgia, Maine, Connecticut, Rhode Island, certainly a lot of New England, but really just about everywhere. Yeah.
So do you see
Including, we've had inquiries from Hawaii and Alaska, folks who have wanted to do it, and the timing hasn't worked out yet, but
I would think the biggest hurdle would be the time difference. Yes.
Yep.
That
was the biggest barrier for the 2 folks that we were talking to in Hawaii and Alaska was the time difference, and winter in Alaska is really hard, like to get your body to want to wake up at 5 in the morning.
with more darkness.
Yep.
And the shift in time frames.
Yeah, we have confidence that within a couple of years we'll have served all 50 states.
And that's what I was going to ask, was about going national, that this could be Perkins, are you looking for this to be kind of a national model?
We are, and for now, that will still all be housed at Perkins, out of our campus in Watertown, and we'll serve people virtually. We can absolutely see a world where eventually maybe we've got folks either in different parts of the United States or even around the world. Like I said, Perkins already has Perkins International, so we could see this being replicated in the countries we already serve, with similar programs, obviously customized to that country and their their job markets. So maybe it's customer success, or maybe it's something else. And then the other place that we think could be a logical expansion would be serving an older age group. So
Yes.
right now we serve folks
Absolutely.
up to 35, and the reason we do that is because
Technology
it's
and
really
a fear of it.
our program was really designed to help people early in their career. So our curriculum is written for folks who've maybe had, some volunteer work or some internships, and maybe, some short-term work, but really they're early in their career.
Now, what
Whereas-
about
50 plus.
yeah. Now, what about also, yes, for lack of a better term, native language in the United States is English. However, there are people who are blind or visually impaired who their primary language is not English. I'm thinking in our area, for example, Spanish.
Spanish and Haitian, Creole,
Yes.
and there's a number of different people
So
affected.
can you accommodate those people and fold them in so that they can't sit back and say, well, I don't speak English well enough to be able to participate in a program like this?
We've definitely had folks in the program for whom English is their second, third, or fourth language. So we can definitely work with them. Our program we don't have translators built into our program, so there does have to be English proficiency enough to get through our curriculum. But that could certainly be another area where we could expand. But as I said, right now we have had folks come through the program where they maybe came to the U.S. later in their academic life, and we're able to serve them. We also have, speaking of can we work with students like X, Y, or Z? We do also serve students with multiple complexities. So our program is designed for people for whom they've identified visual impairment as their largest barrier to employment. And we certainly have adults who are coming to us with multiple disabilities. So maybe it's, cerebral palsy or muscular dystrophy or autism. There are a lot of people for whom blindness is part of their makeup, but it's not the
Not
only
all of
thing.
it.
Yeah.
Well, I know we're currently talking to our politicians here in town. We have a very close relationship with our state legislators. Maybe we should poke them about talking about getting some more assistance in foreign language
Exactly.
to get that type of support, because it sounds like that might be the next help.
The next step.
That you might need, in addition to an employer, but to provide the ability to have somebody have that language barrier removed as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I'd like to thank you again for coming in. We'd love to have you in studio one day, but we love the fact that we're now able to bring guests in remotely like this. This has been a huge opportunity for us in our show.
And thank you
Yeah,
for talking.
Yes.
I so appreciate you accommodating me and allowing me to
absolutely.
be here remotely. And I would love to come and meet you both in person. And I am certainly grateful for the opportunity to get to talk about this program. And the more people who know about it, the more people we can help.
Thank
Yes.
you so much. And again, we appreciate the opportunity to hear from you. This has been incredible information for our audience. And
I can't wait for this
We're very
program
happy.
to go out and
Yep.
we can start helping you try to put that information out there.
Thank you. It was such a joy meeting with you and talking with both of you.
Thank
same
you.
here. Thank you.
So again, on behalf of the North Andover Commission on Ability Assistance, we'd like to thank Deana Criess from the Career Launch Program at Perkins School for the Blind for joining us today on Ability Assistance. You can reach Deana by phone at 617-972-7804 or email at deana.criess@perkins.org. You can also learn more about the entire program at www.perkins.org/career-launch. In May, we'll be celebrating our graduating seniors,
Amazing. Amazing.
who are our crew. And then we're also going to have for our guest another remote individual for the group from 4 Paws for Ability. And to finish out our 2021-2022 season, we will be celebrating our over 25 episodes.
It's amazing.
Oh my God, I can't wait. And our guest in June will be Dawn Warren, and she is North Andover's town clerk. We're consistently looking for new topics to explore here on Ability Assistance. I'm currently looking into guests to invite for our September, October, and November and December episodes. We would truly love to know what topics you would want more information about. And if there are specific topics that you'd like to learn more about, please email me directly at pjones@northandoverma.gov.
We would like to thank all of our volunteer crew from the Greater Lawrence Technical School and Curry College, and from the Greater, oh, I already said, thank you, teleprompter. A little bit of a repeat there, but from the Greater Lawrence Technical School, we have Alan Garcia from IT. From Graphics and Communication, we have John Kafori. And from Curry College, our own Carly Jones.
And in addition to watching through your local cable station, you can catch all of our programs on demand via YouTube, the Cablecast app through Roku and Apple TV, North Andover CAM website, podcast on Podbean. We're everywhere. And until next month, thank you and goodbye.
Take care.